Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 612 area code. I think that's Minnesota. Who's this?
This is BullProg?
BullProg, in Minnesota, right?
Yep, Minneapolis, right off of Lake Street.
So, what can you tell us?
Well, I mean, I was there from the start, from Tuesday through Thursday, and then, decided to stay in and protect my block on the curfew nights. But, yeah, we all, sorry. It's all still really hard. But Tuesday, everyone met up at the memorial site. We're grieving, expressing love and anger and sadness. And a bunch of us started marching. I mean, there were thousands of people in the streets going north and south and east and west from that area. And hundreds of us started marching towards the 3rd precinct over by the Target and Cub Foods. And when we got there, we all gathered and surrounded the entire place. And we're just chanting, and we were just asking for the arrest of those 4 people. And sure, people were banging on doors, but the police are protected, and they come out, and instead of some humility in the failure of their department, they start pepper spraying the front of the crowds, pissing people off. So people run over to the Target, and they got some eggs and some milk. They started pelting the place. And then people were grabbing rocks and bricks and stuff and started smashing windows. And then the cops came in and laid down tear gas, which pissed people off even more. Like they were so afraid of everybody because they know they did wrong, and they didn't do anything to de-escalate that.
And this is on Tuesday, right?
That was on Tuesday. Like they should have let that precinct go as collateral damage, and meet the demands the next day, and that would have been the dispersal of the crowds.
Right.
But they kept up a defense, and I went out Wednesday night too, just because I knew lots of friends that were out there, friends and neighbors, and wanted to protect and keep them safe as possible. And I go out there in the evening, and within a half hour of being there, I saw that the AutoZone windows getting smashed, and people in the crowd, it was a mix of like, whoa, I don't know if this is right. This seems weird, but also like, we're not going to let that scare us away from our righteous cause of why we're holding this space. And then
you didn't see that. You didn't see the guy with the umbrella do the windows at the AutoZone, did you?
I didn't. No, I was 100 feet away from, or a couple hundred feet away from there. I was at the intersection that it was at.
And that's
as it started burning,
And that's really when like the private businesses ended up like getting all messed up, right? And people.
Yeah, there's a small like payday loan check cashing place that seemed to get smashed up first, and that was by people that were like, animated smashing, like running up with a skateboard or something or whatever they were finding, and as opposed to the one guy calmly going around with a hammer, smashing the AutoZone windows. Like there's a difference in demeanor between some of the local people that were like so upset that they were smashing stuff.
And then and then Thursday, of course, the county DA comes out and says, don't know if we can do this, and that really set people off quite a bit.
Yeah. Thursday, I went down. I was at the downtown protests, which was peaceful. We marched through the streets and stopped at a few intersections and just held space, and then we went marching towards the precinct downtown. And as we got closer to it, the police were there, all geared up, ready to face off. And the crowd was in their face. They're still protected. Maybe a couple of people threw water bottles or whatever. Like, that's no big deal. We're not protected, and we're getting shot with rubber bullets and pepper balls. And
you're also not specifically trained to serve and protect, theoretically, the community. I mean, if police aren't trained if their job is not to show restraint in these situations, I don't know what their job is. Yeah,
exactly.
If they are not trained sufficiently to exercise restraint there, and if it's too difficult, which if someone said to me, like, look, you have no idea what's going to happen, you have no idea whether you can be shot or whatnot, then I think maybe you don't deploy the police until much later. If this is a genuine fear, then, why would you put these people into that situation? So give me a sense of, like, so now Ellison has taken over. My understanding is now all 4 officers are going to be charged, or they're, working on charges for all 4 men. What's your sense of what's going on? Like, what's your sense of what's happening tonight?
There's going to be a gathering in front of the governor's mansion, as far as I understand. And that's going to just be in the early evening from like 4 to 6. But people hold the space as long as they can. That's been the tactic each and every night, because the disruption is what's getting the attention.
Right. BullProg, stay safe. Thanks for calling in, and hang in there. I know this is particularly difficult for people in that community, and but appreciate you calling in, and again, stay safe. All right.
I lost my entire street. Like, the whole Lake Street is all gone. So
what do you mean by that?
I hope this from, oh my God, I don't even know how far down it goes. I haven't gone, but both directions for miles from where I live, there's burnt down businesses, smashed up businesses, and small minority-owned businesses, like the stuff that just wouldn't make sense for the movement
to have destroyed.
Yeah. I think people understand. Like, I think people understand. Oh my God, it's so complicated because it just sucks. It sucks all around. I don't know who is behind each and every instance of destruction, and whether or not you agree with it. It's going to be really hard for us here.
Yeah, I mean, that is more often than not. In fact, I think always what happens in these situations is that communities get destroyed, and they don't. There's no resources to rebuild. There's no public or private resources to rebuild, and these things end up like staying like this for generations. Hang in there, BullProg.
I just want to note, with regards to like not knowing who is ultimately responsible to this, there's a lot of rumors going around, but one thing that is documented by Minnesota Public Radio in this good article is that to the extent there are outside agitators, it's right-wing folks. This article does a good job of pouring cold water on the Antifa BS. And there's documented, like, there's a lot of fascists in rural Minnesota and in the suburban areas that have big pickup trucks and guns. And this is a time to maybe go to, I've seen reports of like people going around in the back with a bunch of guys in the back of a truck just around suburban neighborhoods patrolling stuff. So I mean,
no license plates. I've seen some of that.
Yes.
Too.
Yeah. And I mean, 3% symbols and stuff like that.
Yeah. I would imagine it is a mix of local people, and to the extent that there are people outside of town, I'm sure there's some people who've come in to support friends and to protest. But I think that there's also, I would imagine a significant portion of people who are coming in and trying to take advantage of the situation. I don't think there's sort of like overwhelming numbers of either. And this is just, from what I've read, and, people who follow things like, Bugaloo or whatever the hell that is. And, but it is, I mean, look, I'm not there, and certainly the anger is justified. But the outcomes of this kind of destruction in these neighborhoods is never good for the people who live there. Never good. Just,
I mean, I saw actually on Thursday, the very young crowd of protesters went out of their way to be polite to local businesses. Like, everybody was really jazzed up. But at one point I saw a guy like grab a sandwich board sign from outside of a falafel place, and someone else was like, no, put it back. And he put it back.
Oh, I mean, I've seen video of people protecting Targets. I'm not sure exactly where it was, but like literally watching, guys getting ready to smash it, open it, and like activists coming out in front and literally putting their bodies in front of it just because they don't want, that message to be overtaken.
Yeah. But with all this, fair or not fair, or
that is what will be, sort of manipulated. I mean, it's very hard, I think, to sort of like sense how different constituencies around the country see this stuff. I mean, I think my sense is that more than at any other time, there is broader, wider swaths of sympathy with the protesters than in the past. Like, I think, like, this happens 10 years ago, and there is little question in my mind that the entire narrative, like, there's nobody talking about police reform, that it's completely about how do we crack down on these people. The idea that there is a significant discussion of raising the issue of police reform, not just on Twitter, but in pronouncements by, I don't know, the police chief from Atlanta, or other major figures and major national publications, I think is, it's not to have a party, but it's somewhat of progress.
Yeah. And not just reform, like abolition has made it into the mainstream conversation, especially in the past few days. We saw Alex Vitale, the guy whose book I'm always citing, was on NY1 talking about police abolition and what it means to be working within an abolitionist framework. Just earlier today, I think, Benjamin Dixon was tweeting about it. I mean, he's not really a mainstream source, but he's awesome. Like, people are paying attention.
Yeah, I
and
just
asking questions about it.
I just want to clarify my critique of the abolition thing, which is basically a communications critique, which is that it's easier to sell people on a project than it is an identity. But I will say, after being out on the protests on Saturday night, I think the importance of abolition as a framework to those actual protests is important because, and maybe we have different positions on this, but I don't want to see the cops marching with the protesters in this thing. Like that, I don't like that. And maybe in certain police departments where they have been, reformed, like the Camden one, I guess, have been through a lot of police reforms, maybe they can march with the protesters. But I got to say, the symbolism of it is very worrisome to me. Like these places, like that's not nearly enough. And it's not even nearly enough to arrest these officers. We need major structural change. And I don't see any give on the police side of this. Obviously, they're digging in their heels like crazy. And I don't even I see people talking about it online, but I worry that in local news media, you're just seeing riots, you're just seeing looters, and you're not seeing that stuff.
I think
it's
like
weird.
I think there's a big urban-rural divide that is very difficult to sort of perceive. I think it's difficult to perceive, the perspective on either side of that line. I mean, I think I agree with you in terms of the cops marching. I think we can cite it as an example of various police departments who can have a different response to this. But, and I got no problem with cops marching if they're, well, I'm not saying they're in plain clothes, but if they're off duty, and in civilian wear. But, the one thing that stuck out at me with there was a video of that Flint sheriff that I mentioned up front who said, we're taking off our helmets and putting down our batons and we're going to march with you. And he finished by saying, I want to turn this into a parade, not a protest. And then I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
What? A parade? No, it's a protest. I mean, it's like, I like the idea that, you take off your equipment. Maybe it's good to take off your badge, and go and march. But it's a protest. That's the point. It's not a parade. And
what are you doing about your brothers and sisters in the force that are covering their badge numbers in other cities right now?
Right.
I'm more concerned about that than you marching with us.
Not exactly going to address that. If you want to get out there and protest, all right. But parade, I don't think so.
Yeah. And all different people of all different political orientations are participating in these protests, but there has been a strong element of the abolitionist movement, which says the cops, much like you think of a body like ICE, everyone on the left acknowledges that ICE can't be reformed. It's structurally bad. It serves a bad purpose, must be abolished. Abolitionists feel the same way about the police. And it's not just an identity. It's a movement with deep roots in the left, deep roots in the Black left. And I think it's time for people to take it more seriously. And it's not just a pie in the sky goal either, right? Like, it sounds crazy to some people, like, how are we supposed to do that? There are concrete steps we can take right now within an abolitionist framework and use it to guide policy, like reducing the budgets for police departments, like increasing the budgets for other social services, treating the root causes of crime instead of the symptoms. There are a number of things that we can do right now and ways that we can guide policy within an abolitionist framework. And we can hold two frameworks in our heads at once, right? Because I'm sort of ambivalent about the idea of progressive prosecutors, but I supported Tiffany Caban's campaign. I wanted her to win. That's not abolitionism. That's reform. That's a different lens. We can hold contradictory thoughts in our heads, and we can endorse multiple movements for change because we just want something to work.
And another metaphor you could use is the sort of defund or de-investment in apartheid sort of stuff, right? Like Minneapolis public schools to drop contract with police after George Floyd death. Great. A whole bunch of stuff more of that. Because I imagine they're probably contracting their services out. They're a business, right?
Right.
Oh yeah, and the cops in schools is a major problem in cities across the country.